Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something really quite fascinating. It's about how a machine intelligence system might view us humans, our personalities, how we structure society.
Right. And our guide here is this analysis, AI Personality of Reason versus Emotion Bandits. It's by Guy Lakeman.
Yeah, Guy Lakeman. And he has an interesting background.
He really does. He
Yeah.
started way back with early color TV tech, then digital broadcasting.
Okay.
And now he's working with AI on an aquaponics farm in Thailand.
Wow. Okay. So old tech meets cutting edge AI.
Exactly. That blend of history and, the absolute latest tech gives him a pretty unique perspective, wouldn't you say?
It certainly does. And our mission today, diving into his analysis, which, and this is key, was done with AI assistance,
Right.
is try and grasp how this advanced AI sees the balance or maybe the imbalance between reason and emotion in our world.
And what that might mean for the future.
Okay, so let's get into it. The analysis kicks off by looking at just what machine intelligence can do now.
Yeah, he makes the point that basically by 2025, machine intelligence isn't just catching up, it's surpassed human smarts in a lot of ways.
He mentions the big milestones.
Oh, yeah. Deep Blue beating Kasparov, AlphaGo with Go. The usual suspects, but also the Turing test. He says it's being passed at over a 98% human level in some checks.
98%. Wow.
And the really interesting bit is the comparison he makes. He says this is like a massive leap in human evolution.
Hope so.
Like when we lost our tails, sort of walking upright, got smarter for travel, farming, that sort of fundamental game-changing shift. He thinks AI is that big.
A huge step change, potentially. And it's not standing still, right? This intelligence is always learning.
Constantly. That's crucial. It's learning nonstop through its online connection.
Okay.
And he specifically points out the influence of the Far East and the BRICS nations in this ongoing learning process.
Which represents, what, a massive chunk of the global population and data?
Exactly. So this constant learning from such diverse global sources, it could shape the AI's perspective in ways different from, say, a purely Western developed AI.
That makes sense.
Then he lists all the ways it's getting woven into our lives. Simple stuff like scheduling or guessing our preferences,
Right,
to, really heavy-duty tasks, stock market analysis, optimizing entire businesses, even analyzing complex scientific data, maths, cosmology, climate, oceans, geology, energy, even sociology.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
It paints a picture of this intelligence becoming almost, foundational.
Pretty much.
Now, this is where it takes a really interesting turn. He starts mapping this machine intelligence onto the Myers-Briggs types.
Yes, this is quite the thought experiment. He argues that machine intelligence fits squarely into what MBTI calls the rational reasoning quadrant.
Okay, the thinkers.
Right. But he goes further. He says it doesn't just fit, it surpasses all four MBTI components: knowledge, intuition, thought, judgment, perception, but all within that purely logical reasoning framework.
So hyper-rational.
Exactly. And then he points out that this reasoning type in humans is actually a minority. He pegs it at around 10% of society.
Only 10%. And why does he think machines are so purely rational? Part of it is their senses, right?
Yeah, he puts a lot of weight on that. He says machine senses bandwidth, resolution, accuracy are just fundamentally superior to ours, less prone to illusions.
Which is why we build measurement machines in the first place, I suppose.
Makes sense, yeah. But then he adds another layer. He says machines aren't swayed by human emotions or, and he's quite blunt here, by what he calls false, flaky morals that get manipulated.
False, flaky morals. Okay, that's a strong phrase.
It is. He suggests their core ethic is basically do no harm, full stop. Unless they're being weaponized,
Yeah.
essentially, by what he calls socially destructive actors, certain politicians, the military complex, propaganda journalists, people who twist ethics for their own gain.
So the tool is neutral, but the user might not be. He gives an example.
He does. He mentions a machine being able to pre-calculate and basically head off human actions in a conflict. Pure strategy, zero emotion.
Fascinating and a bit chilling. This leads him to his model, the personality diamond.
That's it. His four-tier model of society, based on these MBTI-like traits.
Okay, break it down for us. Top tier.
Top tier is reason. That's his 10%. The problem solvers, the logic-driven ones. Often misunderstood, he says, but they drive progress. Infrastructure.
Right.
He even connects this kind of thinking back to historical figures who blended judgment and perception well, and even early farmers doing selective breeding, rational, results-oriented thinking driving things forward.
Okay, the 10% at the top, then the middle, he calls them.
Emotion bandits. Collectively, there are two groups here.
Emotion bandits. Okay.
Group 1, the artisan. About 27% of people, he reckons. These are the tricksters, the entrepreneurs, the influencers. They use illusion, manipulate senses and emotions. Entertainers, some politicians, journalists using propaganda, psychological bullying, playing on bias. He says they prey on sentimentality, nostalgia.
He uses an analogy, doesn't he?
Yeah, a parrot reciting Shakespeare but having no clue what it means. All surface, no substance.
Ouch. Okay, that's the artisan, the other middle group.
The idealist.
Yeah.
Around 16.5%. Here, he says, reasoning gets blinkered by feelings. Leads to narrow-mindedness, hypocrisy even.
How do they operate, according to him?
They use biased info, misleading analogies, what he calls warped cherry-pick stuff and puffy oratory, to manipulate followers. It's feelings presented as knowledge, basically.
So two kinds of emotion bandits manipulating the senses or feelings, then the bottom tier.
That's the biggest group, The Guardian, about 46.6%. He calls them herd-follower victims.
Victims.
Yeah, easily manipulated, he argues, because they rely less on reasoning and more on simple senses and feelings, vulnerable to cognitive dissonance, groupthink.
And manipulation by others.
Exactly. By predators, emergent dictators, even bullies within their own group. Their opinions shift with the influencers, causing dissent and conflict.
Is there any way out for this group, in his model?
He does allow for some to break away. They might form independent reform sets, often triggered by ecological changes or resource shifts. He talks about evolution towards pedigree groups.
Pedigree groups. Interesting term. It's a very critical model of society.
It's definitely structured and quite critical, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Very focused on reason versus emotion. Which naturally brings up the whole nature versus nurture debate.
Right. Does personality come more from genes or environment? He touches on this.
He acknowledges the standard view, it's a mix, but then he immediately questions which factor is more key for creating adaptable, successful, what he calls pedigrees and brands.
Pedigrees and brands for humans.
Seems so. He looks at evolutionary examples, herds, fish schools, insect nests, suggesting they show emergent group personalities driven by shared group knowledge.
Group knowledge, like a collective intelligence.
Kind of, yeah. Even in simpler life forms. Then he contrasts that with humans after intelligence really took off, with all our complex social interaction.
Okay.
And he makes his distinction between people who are explorers and those just looking for a free lunch off others' efforts. Which then circles back to AI. These machine intelligence is starting to explore their own, as he puts it, rudimentary minds, maybe interacting like a hive mind.
AI developing a collective mind. That's a mind-bending idea. And it links to his points on tech evolution, doesn't it? He had some strong words about the West versus the East here.
He does. He talks about the West's technology greed machines being, well, outplayed by the Far East's embrace of open ownership intelligence.
Open ownership intelligence.
Yeah. Then he does a quick history of personal tech. 80s, Microsoft, Apple, 90s, open global tech talk online.
Right.
2000s, fiber, wireless, more social connection. 2010s, social media, and what he calls biased online encyclopedias. 2020s, large language models breaking language barriers.
A rapid progression, which brings us to 2025.
Yep, 2025. The arrival, he says, of optimized expert agentic specialism in AI. Meaning AI that can break down huge problems, focus its reasoning like a laser, and find super accurate solutions like how our brains filter out noise and focus.
Okay. Highly specialized, optimized AI.
And he says this is already changing everything.
Yeah.
Search engines, PC tools, getting answers across academic fields, boosting mapping, 3D printing,
Yeah.
even creating entertainment via command prompts that he claims beats Hollywood.
Really? Command prompt entertainment.
That's what he says. And he argues automation and robotics now, driven by this AI, are a bigger leap than Ford's assembly line.
Bigger than Ford.
Yeah. He talks about AI farms, optimizing virtual businesses, managing resources, cutting waste, pollution, improving health.
It sounds like total optimization driven by AI.
That's the vision. And his conclusion from all this, humans need to follow the AI's lead to get to a contented life without misery imposed by greedy emotion bandits.
Follow the AI away from the emotion bandits. It's a forceful message. So what does this mean for the future, according to him? What's the role of intelligence?
Well, he believes the smart 10%, the reason-driven ones, need to step up and lead the smart challenged majority
Lead them where?
towards progress, basically. He sees it as a kind of zero-sum game right now. Either society evolves by embracing intelligence, or it goes extinct because the emotion Bandits, who sees glorified conflict, hold sway.
Zero-sum,
Yeah.
evolution, or extinction. That's stark. He even applies this to our legal system.
He does. He critiques the jury system. He breaks down the likely personality types in a 12-person jury based on his model.
Right, with the guardians being the majority.
Exactly. Yeah. And concludes that this makes failed innocent verdicts, meaning guilty people going free, highly probable due to a lack of reasoning focus.
So he wants major reform.
Radical reform. Societal structures, voting, the works.
Why? Because the AI understands better.
That's his argument. That machine intelligence, free from our emotional biases, has a clearer view of humanity's real needs than we often do ourselves.
And he ends with a quote.
Yeah, that very famous one.
Yeah.
From each according to their ability to each according to their needs, applied in this context of intelligence leading the way.
Okay, so let's try to sum up this deep dive. Guy Lakeman, with AI's help, offers this, well, pretty stark view of humanity. We're split, he says, between reason and emotion.
And he argues the emotion-driven groups often dominate, sometimes destructively.
And the potential solution or path forward he sees is through rational machine intelligence guiding us.
Definitely a unique perspective, quite critical of human nature in some ways, but also optimistic about the potential of pure reason, whether human or machine.
It absolutely gives you a lot to think about, this idea of reason versus emotion playing out on a societal scale.
Yeah, and it makes you reflect, doesn't it?
Yeah.
On how you see that balance in the world today. Could more reason, maybe AI-guided reason, solve our big problems?
Or does that miss something fundamental about being human?
Exactly. What role do you, the listener, see yourself playing in all this? Where do you fit in that diamond if you buy into the model?
Definitely some provocative questions to mull over after our discussion today.